Hi, I'm Kayla, and I've helped a lot of business owners, including business owners who are in that phase of starting a new business. I know it can feel overwhelming, and you might feel worried that you're forgetting to do something, or you might feel like there's just a lot of little tasks to manage in your new business. So you are not alone in feeling that way. I've created 8 to-do lists that cover different areas of running a business. We'll go over things to do just generally and compliance-wise, financial tasks, sales, expenses, operations, meaning the actual running of your business, marketing and leads, paying for help, continuing education, also known as professional development. Keep in mind, don't feel like you have to do all of this right now. Some things will need to be done before you get your first client or customer to get set up first. And some things can wait and aren't as high priority. So don't feel like it all has to get done today. Not every item is going to apply to your business. It will depend on your location, your industry, your entity, and just your own business of how you want to run it. This list is going to cover a lot. It's not exhaustive because there are things unique to your business, but it's going to cover a lot, and it will definitely inspire you on things that and help you realize things that need to be done for your business. You can also use this as a guide to talk with your accountant. Maybe there's things that you need to know from your accountant, but you need to ask the questions to get that information from them, but you don't know what questions to ask. So this video will definitely help you in guiding what questions to ask, what information you need. I do have a more detailed version of this checklist as a spreadsheet and as a PDF. It's more detailed. It also has more explanation. So just to avoid this video getting too long, that's going to be the more detailed version, and this will be the overview, but you can use that to get more explanation and more information and a longer checklist. Okay, so things to keep in mind that will need to be done for your generally for your business: deciding on a business entity, deciding on the name of your business. You can also decide to have a DBA, which stands for doing business as. This is like a nickname for your business. So you might want to market your business under sort of a nickname that's different from your official business name, especially if you're doing business in your own name. You also need a business license. Keep in mind, depending on your location, sometimes you can wait and there might be you have to meet certain requirements before you're actually required to register your business in your location. So you can find out for your location, what are those requirements of when you're required to register your business. Depending on your type of business or your industry, you might have additional licenses or inspections that are required. You'll also need to file your taxes, of course. You can decide to get a tax filing software or to get an accountant. And depending on your business, you might need to do sales tax, collect sales tax from your customers. If you are a service-based business, most of the time, you don't have to do sales tax, but again, that is specific to your location. So again, talk to your accountant about this. As I go through this checklist, don't worry about if you don't know the answers to all this right away. This is going to guide you in what information do you need to find out what needs to be done, and what information do you need from your accountant. Financially, you'll need a checking account for your business. It does not have to be, and again, you can confirm this with your accountant what applies to you, but normally it doesn't have to be an official business checking account from the bank, but it just needs to at the very least, it needs to be a separate checking account that you use for business. So you don't want your personal transactions mixed in with your business transactions. You want to keep those separate for your business. You may decide you want a savings account for your business. And you'll need a way to track the transactions of your business, the money that's going in and out. You want to track what's happening. You want to track how much money you're making in sales. You want to track how much you're spending in office supplies and how much you're spending in other areas of your business. So in order to track that, you could decide to get a bookkeeping software, Or you might just want to use a spreadsheet. So if your business is very simple, a spreadsheet just might be all that you need, but you want to be able to track the transactions and categorize what's going on so you can see the financial performance of your business, but also it's going to make tax time a lot easier and simpler if you have all that information organized. If you're the type of business that has some cash activity, you'll want to track that. Maybe you have a physical paper log that you use, or if also, again, if you want to use a spreadsheet, but tracking the cash activity that you have on hand so you don't accidentally lose cash, or hopefully no one actually takes any cash. So you want to track how much you have on hand. Also, you want to budget. Again, a spreadsheet can be great for this. But you can also there's some accounting software that will have a budget feature. Sometimes you have to upgrade for that, but you want some way of budget, at least, on paper or a spreadsheet, but somewhere where you're budgeting what you kind of are anticipating your income to be. Maybe you have goals of what your income is, but more realistic expectation of what your income is going to be, and budget for the expenses, what's absolutely necessary, and things like that. So make a budget for your income and your expenses, and then you can compare your actual activity, your actual spending to your budget to make sure you're not going over budget. Depending on your type of business, you may be paid to do a project or a job or an event. So things like that, if that's your type of business, especially as you grow, maybe at the very beginning, you don't, this will be important, but it will be more important as you grow. You'll need to track the financial activity for each job or each project. So you want to see, are you profitable on each job? Did you charge enough to be able to cover the costs related to doing that job? So you want to track the income and expenses for each project or job to make sure that you are charging the amounts that you need to be. Also, depending on your business, are you needing financing? So do you need to get a loan or a line of credit? Of course, it's always good to get creative to try to avoid that, but if that's something that you've decided to do of getting financing, then in that case, you'll also want to put that in your bookkeeping software or your spreadsheet and track how much do you owe, and then track what you've paid toward it so you can track what's going on with your loan so you can make a goal to paying those off. Sales wise, let's talk about what you're going to sell. So what exactly are your services? So maybe you have just one service, and then as you grow, you'll add more services. Or maybe you're going to offer services that cater to different types of clientele. So having that decided, of at least your starting point. So this can always change as you grow, but what are you going to sell? Maybe you're a coach and you're going to offer a planner on the side to complement your services. So things like that of services, and then also maybe products that go with that. If you are paid for jobs or projects, then keep in mind that in something like that, you're going to be buying materials and supplies to do the job. So keeping that in mind of how you're going to cover that. So you want your client to reimburse you for that? Are you going to resell those products, or are you just going to make sure you're charging enough to cover those costs? Then you'll have to think about, how are you actually going to charge your clients and customers? How are they going to pay you? When will you get paid? Are you going to have people pay you up front? Maybe you have them pay you a partial deposit before you even get started. So things like that, you'll have to make a decision on, when are you going to get paid? Is it up front? Are you going to get paid right away when you offer the service? Maybe they come in to meet with you and they pay right there at the end of that meeting. Are you going to invoice them and then they just have to pay by a certain due date? So keeping that in mind. Also, you can decide, what is your pricing model? So are you going to charge by an hourly rate, a project fee, a retainer fee, a subscription package, things like that? How much are you going to charge? So what's the actual pricing? So once you've decided your pricing model, let's say it's an hourly rate, well, how much are you going to charge? What is your hourly rate? You can look at what's the norm for your industry, but also the value that you bring, what you know, how you are better than your competitor and what you have to offer. You kind of factor that into the fee that you charge. And also actually accepting payments. So how are you going to accept payments? So keeping that in mind of how are you going to accept those payments through credit card? Are you going to accept cash? Are you going to accept check? A third party, a peer-to-peer service like Venmo, PayPal, those type of things. Some of those will come with fees, so you can decide which ones have offer a better fee. In the area of your expenses, you can decide what you're going to pay, how you're going to pay. So are you going to be paying by check? Then you'll need checks. Are you going to pay by debit card or by credit card or Venmo or things like that? Bill tracking. So keep in mind of your bills. Some businesses, they're getting a lot of bills from their vendors or suppliers, so they need a way to track that and manage that. Some people, they don't really get bills. So it's just, they're just using their debit card and they're just paying for what they need and that's it. So, but if you are the type of business, maybe you have a venue space and you're getting bills from your suppliers and you have to manage when those bills are due. So in your accounting software, you'll need to enter those bills and enter the due date so you can manage what's due, when is it due, how much is due, and then you can help decide what you're able to pay right now and what you want to pay maybe at the end of the week. You'll need a way to keep receipts. So for tax requirements, you need to keep receipts. And for that, you can decide, and you can decide this with your accountant as well, if you're just going to keep a physical copy of your receipts, store that in a file folder, or if you are going to use a receipt tracking software and keep a digital copy of receipts, or just keep a scan of the receipts on your computer. So, but somehow you need to keep those receipts. Some accounting software will have a feature to keep receipts, so that could be an option as well. When it comes to startup costs, some things you'll need to just get just at the beginning. It won't be a regular cost through the time of your business, but some things you'll need to get just to get up and going. So keep a list, make a list of what are those upfront costs that you need, or those admin costs that you'll need to actually get started. Related to fixed assets, think about big equipment. Maybe you need a business vehicle or a business van, things like that. If you need to purchase large equipment, the general rule of thumb is a fixed asset is typically, if it costs you for that one item, if it costs over $2,500. Some accountants use a different thresholds. So talk to your accountant which threshold they want to go by, but usually you can think of if it's over $2,500, that is a fixed asset of your business that will need to be recorded in your bookkeeping software in a specific way. For tax purposes, your accountant will write that off gradually. They'll track depreciation for that, and then it will gradually be written off for taxes. So you'll have to keep your accountant in the loop about that. Let them know if you made some major purchase so they know what's going on. For expenses, we're coming back to those project or job costs. So think about if you need those job costs, maybe for your first client, what do you need for that first client, or what are you going to need for future clients? So think about what you need to get now versus what you'll need to get later. When it comes to actually running your business, and when the reason you went into business in the first place, you'll need a way to manage your work. So maybe you need a project management software or a productivity software to manage the work that you're doing for each client, things like that. So having an organized system to that. Of course, this can change and you can adapt this plan as you grow. So, but just having a decision of how you'll start, and then as you grow, you can always make changes. For your business, do you need time tracking? Do you need to actually track the time that you're spending on the work so you know how much to charge your client? So then you'll need a way to do that. So you'll need, usually in a productivity software, there will be a time tracking feature that you can start the timer and stop the timer for, and track and make notes on which client it was for, the work that you did for that client. So you'll need a way to do that. Again, a spreadsheet could always work for this as well. Think about the workload you want to take on. So if you're someone who works with clients or you're taking on a certain number of jobs, how much can you take on now? So again, you'll be able to take on more clients as you grow, and then you can hire more people, have a team, all of that in the future. But at least to start with, what is doable for you at this point? So how many clients can you take on now without overextending yourself? And then that will also help in deciding your fees as well. Just a side note there, that can help in deciding what to charge so that you're making enough income to cover your needs. Depending on your business, maybe you need client scheduling software or just a way to schedule the clients so that you know who you're working on when, if that's just a calendar, or you're actually using a scheduling software to plan out the time that you're spending on each client or job. Also, you can decide a client onboarding system. And by that, I just mean, what's the process look like that once a client, a potential client, decides they want to work with you, we'll have a list ready of what happens, what's that workflow to get them from saying, yes, they're ready to work with you, to actually you are actually working with them and you're doing the work and starting the project. So what's that process like? So you have some organized system when you're starting with a new client. So that way it'll save you a lot of time. As you get a new client, you have the same process you follow with each new client to get them started. This will also get more sophisticated as you grow, but some organized system, even if it's pretty basic, but some system that you can just do with each new client. Also, client offboarding, when you're done with a project, you're done with a client, you finished that project, what's that process look like of maybe sending them a thank you email, asking for a review, things like that, something that it's a smooth transition to ending with them so that they have a good experience and they remember to work with you next time if they need help again. Then we also need to get your business out there. People need to know about your business. So how are people going to find out about you? You can make a list on the ways that you can do marketing now. This can always get more sophisticated later, but at least for now, how can people find out about you now? Are certain ways in person in your local area that you can introduce yourself to people locally? Maybe you have existing connections or people you've already worked with who know the kind of quality that you do, so you can reach out to those people to be your first customers. People can also find out about you online, of course, so social media and different means online. On my checklist, in the link below, I do have a lengthy list on ideas for all of this. So I have lots of ideas for in-person ideas for marketing and online ideas for marketing. So I've got a longer list in the link below, but you can make a list of ways that you can get yourself out there and get yourself introduced to people. Now, once people discover you, how are they going to turn into a serious lead where they're actually getting more information about your services and if you have what they're looking for? So how will they turn into serious leads? What's that process like? Once they find out about you, do you want them to call you? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to sign up for a list? Something like that as an example. And this may not be for now, it depends on your type of business, but either now or in the near future, you may need to pay someone to help you. So maybe it's not a situation where you need to hire an employee. You're not quite at the stage yet for payroll, but you just need to pay someone to help you. So maybe you're paying your accountant, of course, but you're also paying maybe a consultant, you're paying maybe a bookkeeper, you're just paying someone to make a website for you. So paying someone to help you, anything like that, or just paying maybe to assist you on a job, something like that. Anything like that, those would be independent contractors. If you're more in an industry where you're used to calling them subcontractors, those are they're officially called independent contractors, even though you refer to them as subcontractors. So think about, do you need people like that? How are you going to pay them? How you pay them actually does make a difference on when it comes time to filing 1099s. Again, in my spreadsheet, I've got more details on the 1099s and about that, but definitely talk to your accountant on how that applies to your specific business. So if you pay an independent contractor over $600 total for the year, then you'll be required to file a 1099 form. This is just, you're not paying taxes or anything on this. You're just informing the government that you paid this person. So that way the government knows that that contractor has received income to kind of expect them to be filing taxes, and they know that that person's received income. So keep that in mind, that how you pay them actually can get you out of having to file the 1099. So if you paid them through a certain payment method, that payment method might give them a 1099, and then you don't have to worry about filing that. So talk to your accountant about those details so you can decide the best payment method that's going to work best for you. And then even if you do need to file 1099s, then your accountant can also help you file those as well. The W-9 form is something you'll need your independent contractor to fill out first when you're first working with them. So go over that with your accountant on when you need to give someone a W-9 to. Keep in mind employee classification. So what I mean by this is the way that you work and the relationship that you have with that contractor. If you're kind of treating them more like an employee, if the government finds out about that and they deem that no, they're really more of an employee, then they're going to require that you pay them like an employee. You might have to pay the back payroll taxes that you should have been paying them from the beginning. So just keep that in mind of the relationship that you have with that contractor, that you're really treating them like a contractor and not an employee. Again, this is something to go over with your accountant on the details and all the kind of legalities involved there. But just keep that in mind, be aware of that, that to make sure, are they an independent contractor? And then confirm with your accountant if it is time to hire an employee and to get them on payroll. And finally, we have professional development or continuing education. Depending on your industry, you might be required to get certain courses or certain credits, things like that. So you'll need to carve out the time in your calendar to keep up with that and make sure that you're meeting those requirements. But you may not be required. So if you're in an industry where you really don't have any required professional development, there might just be things that you want to keep learning on your own. Think of this in two parts, because usually people just think of the first part. So yes, it's good to keep up with what's going on in your industry. That's very important. And you can definitely need to keep learning so that you can, what's in your own industry, keep increasing your knowledge in your own industry and in your role, so that you can provide more value and eventually even raise your rates because you are more knowledgeable, more experienced. But also keep increasing your knowledge on just running a business, because a lot of people are very knowledgeable about their work and the service that they're providing, but they're new to having a business. So keep learning about just being a business owner, having a business, things that I've already covered on this business, increasing your knowledge on these different areas so that it's not, so that it's a lot easier in running a business and you just feel a lot more in control of your business. You just feel like you more know what's going on, and it just helps you a lot more in running your business and in making decisions on growing and expanding your business, because you understand how things work. Here is a preview of the spreadsheet that I mentioned. You'll notice at the bottom, you'll have 8 tabs here on those different areas that I mentioned, but there is more explanation. So for example, in the sales tab, I have that sales to-do list or checklist, but you will have a way of checking off which items apply to your business. You can also check off which ones are high priority decisions that you need to make, what you need to do now versus what can wait. So you can decide what's high priority. And then once you've made a decision, so let's say you need to decide on a way to how you're going to invoice your client, what software are you going to use. So once you've made that decision, you can keep notes over here, and you can also check off when you are done on a certain task. So you can use this checklist, and also you'll see these different red flags. If you hover over this cell here, it will pop up the explanation of more information on these different items that have a red flag. So you can use this to really help keep you organized, and also customizing this for your business. So at the bottom, you're able to add. So you can always add a row and add things that are specific to your business. This is also the PDF version of that checklist. So it's not an editable PDF, so the spreadsheet is. This is not, but you can use the marking tool, so you can highlight and do text and things like that on the PDF. On here, you'll have the checklist itself without any explanation. So just the checklist itself that you can see. You can print this out or use those PDF editing tools to check things off or highlight things. And then you've also got the version with additional explanations and notes. So you'll have the kind of the checklist with these notes, so you can see it all right here without having to hover like I did on the spreadsheet. So you'll have that version as well. When you get this from my Etsy shop, you'll get the PDF version, and you'll get the spreadsheet version as well. Keep in mind, it is an Excel spreadsheet, but you are able to open it in Numbers or Google, so that you should be able to open it in those other programs if that's what you're used to using. All right, so that is the checklist and starting a new business, specifically a service-based business. Not all this has to be done right now, but it is going to help you just stay organized, and good luck to your new business.